Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are taking a look at new Springans cards. This is really surprising. I was not ready to see this. I'm actually quite excited for this. I gave these a read earlier today. Very, very promising stuff. There's also a generic card as the third card we're going to look at here. Photon Hypernova reveals, still chugging along, even though we are finally done with Darkwing Blast. Yeah, let's get into it. We only got 3 cards to go through, but they're pretty tasty. So starting off here, we have Gigantic Champion Sargus. So if you want to get a closer look here, he looks pretty cool. Still kind of like a Megazord-y. I'm still getting Power Ranger Megazord vibes from this guy, but we'll take it. Sargus, kind of a weird card because he's kind of painted to be the boss of the Springans, but he's still just like a meh card. But let's see if this can be like an upgraded version of that. And one thing important to note before we even move forward at all here, this does not have Springans in the name. It is just Gigantic Champion Sargus. Unless there's a translation error here or something, this will not be a Springan. So rank 8 Fire Machine Exceed Effect Monster, 2800 attack, 1500 defense. I believe that's the same stats as Sargus, which is cool. He is generic. He's a generic 8, 2 or more level 8 monsters, and once per turn, you can also Exceed summon him by using one Springan Exceed monster you control. Transfer its materials to this card, and both of his other effects are hard ones for turns as well. So very cool. Whether you have Merrymaker or what's the other one called? The other rank 8 we have with the cool removal effect. I don't remember his name, but you can also Exceed on top of him. If this card has a material, you can just add a Springan or Therian card from your deck to your hand. Nice. This is cool. Any Springans or any Therian card from deck to hand. That's pretty freaking sweet. There's going to be some really cool use for this. We'll talk about that in a sec. But very cool. I love this is also card, so that could be spell, trap, monster, not just monster. We've seen archetypes that rely on spell traps but can only search monsters in certain spots, and it becomes a little bit clunky that way. Any card, really sweet. Also, like, hey, we're talking about a theoretic Springans card, and we're searching Therians as well. Therians generically good and splashable in certain decks. Really cool. And the second effect, if an Exceed material is detached, not just from this guy, just any Exceed material is detached, which means you could play a matchup versus an Exceed based deck, and if they detach, you could play against Sprite, and if they have to do a line that goes through Gigantic Sprite, this can fire, right? Which is cool. You can target a card on the field, either destroy it or return it to the hand. That's pretty freaking strong as well. I like this card a lot. Very easy to summon. Keep in mind that outside of Springans itself, right? And Springans, this is really cool as well. And they use the field spell. It cheats out one of the Exceeds, and then you could just they all equip themselves as material to those Exceeds, and then you could just overlay this guy on top of one of those, which is really cool. Or the Exceeds in the archetype are generic. Merrymaker, generic rank 4. The other one that I can't remember the name, generic rank 8, and that just gives this guy even more material if that's how you want to do it. Really, really cool card. Secondly, I'm thinking about something like Earth Machine, potentially. If you can just make a rank 4 in Earth Machine, which you already do in the deck, whether you're making, when you make like Gear Gigant X to go ahead and search any machine, level 4 lower machine monster, if you are able to make another rank 4, you just make this, search a Therian. What's a good Therian card? Oh, I don't know. Maybe just Regulus, like the best one, and that's just going to pop on the field as an Omni-Negate for you? That's really freaking cool. I like this a lot. This card's really, really cool. As far as pure Springans goes, like I said, even easier to summon. Searches you potentially more Springan stuff, which is either like giving you access to more of your interruption cards, which seemed to me, when I ever played Springan, to be the biggest problem. Not being able to get enough interruption set up turn 1, and also just not even being particularly amazing going second either. This card kind of helps. I like that. Second effect is really cool as well. That interruption could be pretty nice. I believe the next card we're going to look at here has a way to quick effect detach a material from this card, as well as Sargus. We're talking about Sargus, making fun of Sargus. Sorry, Sargus. I love you, man. he has the quick effect to detach a material to pop a card. If you do both of those, you're going to pop a card with regular Sargus by detaching from this guy, and then he will trigger to get you either a pop or a bounce as well on top of it. Really cool. So you get either double pop or a pop and a bounce with just that basic setup. And that basic setup is probably pretty easy because this guy just searches a Springin card. So really, really cool. I like this card a lot. I think it has extra value in Springans. I think generically it could come up in other decks as well. I'll be really, really curious to see where people go with it. Because even outside of Earth Machine in that example, with just like making a Merrymaker and then laying this card on top of it to search Therian Regulus, this card could still come up just because it's in other ways with just any deck that can make a rank 4, maybe wants to play a Therian package, and you go from there. Really cool. Next up here we have Tally Ho Springans. The artwork on this looks so cool, by the way. It is just a fireworks show of Springans monsters like flying through the air. I love it. Looks really cool. It is a quick play spell. You can only use both of its effects once per turn. When you activate this card, you can also detach up to 3 materials from your Exceed monsters. That's the first line. So you choose, it's kind of like how Rika, when you do the effect, you do one thing, but you can also choose to tribute a plant to get a bonus effect. That's kind of what we're looking at here. The payoff for this, add 1 Springin monster from your deck to your hand. Then, if you detached any materials when you activated this card, you can special summon the same number of Springans monsters from your hand and or graveyard. Woo! Okay. That's really, really powerful. So if you choose to detach anything, there's a couple different applications. The first thing here is that the Springin monsters, if you don't know how the archetype works, they all have the ability from hand or grave to just, hand, field, or grave actually, to just attach as material to a Springan's Exceed. And so you can end up with a ton of material in one Spriggan Exceed in one turn. And so the detach for this is not even that like crazy because you're just getting a search. And this is a Springin card. So if you have not started with this, you could potentially search this off Sargus. Maybe if you've already gotten to him, you could still have 3 Springin monsters attached to this guy. You could detach 1 or 2 to go ahead and fire this card up. So search a Springin monster and then go ahead and summon back the 2 Springans you detached immediately back to the field. That could be a Sargus that you got in rotation. Boom, now you've got that going. Really, really cool. Secondly, this other effect is really cool. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 Exceed monster on the field. That is any Exceed, yours or your opponent's. Detach one material from it, and if you do, add this card to your hand. These effects are not even once and only like activate 1 and only once per turn. This is just both in the same turn. Maybe this card becomes a really good middle card as well in like certain strategies. I don't know. This engine seems like really, really interesting because you could literally use this as an extender, as a consistency card, whatever. Then once you get into an Exceed, if you just have a material you don't have to have on that monster at that exact moment, you can just go ahead and detach it to add this card back. It's a quick play spell, so set it. And with this guy that we already have, if you just use this again to search like another follow-up card and detach at least 1 material, this will trigger him to go ahead and pop. So like it adds an interruption to your board, adds follow-up, it's a consistency card, it's an extender, it's like literally everything. This card is amazing. It has Springans in the name, so it's super searchable, including off of this guy, Gigantic Champion Sargus. I love it. I really do. I think this card's amazing. It recurs itself. This card's crazy good. But yeah, very, very cool. Could you imagine like a weird scenario where you play against like a deck that you're in a grind game and it's a very close duel, but your opponent like cleared your board and they made like 2 Mat Zeus, and then they cleared you once with the Zeus, but they have 2 materials on it, and this card's just engraved, and you just detach a material from their Zeus to add this card back, and now they have 1 material on Zeus, and they just don't have a Zeus fire now? Like, that could be so crazy. I don't know. All right, and the final card we have here is Gigantic Thunder Cross. This card has, I believe this is Bestial Albalos from the new Darkwing Blast set coming up in a couple weeks here. Other than that, it's a generic name, and it's a generic card, it appears. So let's get reading. So normal trap, you can only activate 1 card with this card's name per turn. Here's how it goes. Target monsters on the field and or in the graveyards equal to the difference between the number of both players' banished cards. That's cost. Banish them. Then your opponent can special summon one monster from their deck. Okay, so obviously the ceiling for this card is absolutely crazy, especially if like a duel's already been going on and like you've banished some stuff. Maybe you play Desires, maybe you play Grand Maju, something like that. So maybe that could be a way things go, and you're able to just banish a ton of cards. That could be something that's really powerful. But there's definitely some flaws here. Like obviously banishing cards from hand or field and graveyard at the same time. It's really powerful, especially in high quantity like this that you would assume would be going on. The biggest thing for me, though, is two big flaws. The first one is this. You target monsters on the field and or in the graves equal to the difference between the number of players' banished cards. If this does not get like changed with a translation and up to instead of equal to, this has to be an exact number. So your opponent has to have, or there has to be at least, monster targets on fields and in graveyards up to the number of different banished cards. Because what if you just play Desires? Just because, that's how you do. That's 10. There has to be 10 monsters. And, sometimes you just may not even want to banish your own monsters. So, I don't want to banish my own monsters. It takes weird setup, right? It is under the predicate that you're playing more or playing, banishing stuff to kind of have a good number there. Secondly, your opponent gets to summon from deck. There's no restriction on this. This is any monster. Its effects are not negated. Nothing. So we know how powerful Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, and that one card usually can get some, especially if it's the right card, take somebody really, really far in this game as far as value goes. So I just don't have a ton of faith in this card that, one, you kind of need a follow-up interruption after it because you're giving them a follow-up guaranteed. And it takes setup in and of itself. It is still a card that, could just win a duel in the right scenario, but I just think in a wrong scenario, you kind of take everything from your opponent, but they just set it back up because of everything else that they get off of this. So, I don't know. It's okay. I really am not that tied to it. It also isn't searchable by anything specific. I mean, outside of, your Liliths, your trap tricks, stuff like that, because that's a normal trap. But as far as just how it goes, it doesn't have anything in the name that makes it super searchable. So, just okay, in my opinion. So, all in all, the trap, funny enough, the generic trap card that's supposed to be a board wipe plus graveyard wipe, not that strong. But the Springan cards, both crazy. I'm so happy we finally got really good Springan support here. I can't wait to see how it comes up, whether it's going to be other decks, whether it's going to be whether Springans themselves can actually be a rogue deck after this. Very, very, very excited to see where these cards lead. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know your thoughts down below on the new cards, any of the three. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Stay tuned for more stuff. We're done with Darkwing Blast, but we should be getting the final 25-ish cards from Photon HYPERNOVA over the next week, literally week. Actually, exactly a week, which means it'll probably be the next 5 or 6 days. We'll get 25 whole cards. Plus, I'm expecting more Trap Trick support soon to be revealed for the Structure deck, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel, and there'll be other stuff coming as well. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video.